Tonight, the writers of Convergence finally give us the tragic backstory of Telos that'll leave you saying, yeah, alright, that's whatever, I guess. The Atom ends up somehow being crazier than the Harley Quinn story from the same week, go figure. And Superman gives us the only thing that will ever matter at all, and the only reason that Convergence is even kind of remembered. All that and more tonight on the not-so-new 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 192 of the Not-So-New 52. I am your host and welcome to the second half of Convergence month. I really don't know how I want to call that. I am just labeling all of Convergence as one big month because, you know, that may as well be how DC's treating it. It's all just one big thing. But we are now entering into the second issues. So for anybody listening who has not listened to, what would it be, 188, I think? Whatever the start of it starts with a D. It's got Superman and Lois kissing on the thumbnail. Go back to that one, because this is all the number 2 issues for those comics. And what do I mean by that? Well, it's a weekly rotation. We are currently in the pre-Flashpoint, post-Crisis timeline. Like, literally everything that was being published in continuity right up to summer of 2011. That's the continuity we're dealing with here. And in terms of actual books we're dealing with, we have the number 2 issues of Batgirl, Justice League, Nightwing and Oracle, Superman, The Question, Batman and Robin, Harley Quinn, The Speed Force, The Atom, and Titans. Additionally, we do still have the main series of Convergence going on as well. That is issue number 5. So yeah, that's all big stuff pretty much going on. There is one thing I do need to bring up at the beginning here. And this is something I didn't actually think about until probably about a week or two ago. And that is, in the trade paperbacks of these books, and that is what I am reading from, to be clear, there is the story itself, whatever it is we're dealing with, Harley Quinn, Speed Force, whatever it is. But in the originally printed issues, the way that they were originally presented, there was the story itself, and then there was a sneak peek for the books that were being published after Convergence ends. So, like, I think one of them has a sneak peek for Doomed. One of them has a sneak peek for Batmite. One of them has a sneak peek for Bizarro. There's also sneak peeks for books that were already ongoing, things like Batgirl and Green Arrow, which is basically just showing the story arcs that we'll be entering into. I will not be covering those. I thought about it long and hard, and really, there is just no good time to try to fit in even an extra 5 pages to just say that, like, all this is happening. Maybe eventually I'll get back to it. Maybe there's a few weeks much later on in the show that have, like, basically no books coming out that week. Maybe I'll try to fit it in there, but I really don't see how the sneak peeks, despite the fact that they are original content, they are not reprints from later issues, I just can't fit them in very easily. So apologies for that, but just know that is an executive decision I have made because, I mean, hell, we've got like a year left of this show. I got to start picking up the pace a little bit. So yeah, beyond that, I really don't have anything else I want to say. It's a normal week. Everything else is normally ongoing. Just by the end of the month, we'll be done with Convergence. So get ready for that. But for now, more Convergence. Convergence number 5, written by Jeff King, art by Andy Kubert. So last issue we left off with DEIMOS summoning up Brainiac, who's still stuck in a T-sphere from the end of Future's End via time, temporal, chronal energy BS. So this issue picks up and essentially everyone's just looking on in awe, and the narration's done by Dick Grayson, but it really doesn't matter. Everyone's looking on in awe as DEIMOS summons in a Brainiac, and Telos is like, what? What is going on right now? What's happening, man? And Brainiac's inside just being like, DEIMOS, you better let me out of this T-sphere, I swear to God. And DEIMOS is like, ho, 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 you have nothing to threaten me with, Brainiac. I am holding all the cards here. And Telos steps up and he's like, what have you done to Brainiac? And he's like, nothing, but like, you better keep back. I got a force field up, all this stuff. And Telos like starts to threaten him, saying like, you better free him. And then DEIMOS says, oh, I absorbed all of this energy from the Time Masters, and Telos, I know your real name. And Brainiac's like, don't you do it. I'm gonna be mighty pissed if you do that. And Telos is like, I'm part of a, dude, I'm a planet. Like, I am Telos. Telos is me. And he's like, no, you're wrong. That's not what happens. And then he casts his hand, does a magic thing, and all of a sudden we get to see his history, I guess. And it seems that he is also part of the Warlord timeline, as like DEIMOS is. And it turns out he's some dude. He was a man with a wife and children, and a blood moon showed up in the sky, and apparently it was super threatening, and he went out to fight the danger, which it turns out was Brainiac. And Brainiac made some sort of deal with him, which said, hey, I will spare your wife and your people and all that stuff if you become my planets and you serve me for all time. And you agreed, and so you gave up your personality and became that. And that night the man you were died and Telos was born. And Telos is just like, oh god, I'm having a crisis, what's going on here? So Dick Grayson's like, oh, Telos was being manipulated the same way we are. He's not such a bad guy. And Green Lantern's like, are you kidding me? No, he is still a bad guy. What? And so Grayson is ready to go in and like help Telos because Telos can help them. But we cut outside the castle and we see Warlord and the woman that he's with, Tara, are trying to ride in to save the day. And all of a sudden, a bunch of lizard men pop out and they start attacking. And one of them manages to get the drop on Tara, stabs her through the back, and she ain't doing so hot. So cutting back over to DEIMOS, Brainiac's like, all right, you've done enough. Let me out of here. And DEIMOS is just like picking on Telos. He's just like, oh, you stupid little dog isn't going to be able to do anything. No one can. And so in steps one of the Warlord guys who ends up punching DEIMOS and saying like, oh, I'll take you down for everything you've done. And DEIMOS casts a spell that does whatever and manages to stab this guy through the chest, pulling out his heart and saying like, oh yes, you stand against me, you will die for it. Let you be a testament to that. So all of our heroes are like, okay, I'm pretty sure we can agree now that DEIMOS is a bad dude. So let's go in and take care of this. And someone points out like, wait a minute, hold on, where's Batman? And Dick's like, oh, he's dead. Don't worry about it. So immediately Flash and Superman go in. Superman flies in and starts fighting against DEIMOS. He gets blasted by magic and he's like, haha, you're weak to magic. And Superman says, yeah, but like I just get hurt the normal amount as anyone else. It doesn't mean I can't continue to fight you. And so he starts pushing DEIMOS back. DEIMOS makes the point of saying, I've seen the timeline, I know your future, and he says that Lois and Clark get reunited and the Titans are hunted. So what does that mean? It means there's a whole bunch of new books coming after Convergence. So at this point, Telos is starting to, I guess, come back to his senses as the heroes come up and be like, hey man, you cool? You gonna be on our side? And he's like, no, I am Telos. And Brainiac says, yes, Telos, rise, kill DEIMOS. So we cut back to the Warlord. He's just slashing through lizard men until he gets back to Tara and says, oh, stay here, my love. I will go get help, or else I'm joining you soon. And he seems to be looking at a herd of Triceratops nearby. So Flash is running around, I guess, just trying to get the drop on DEIMOS. He doesn't really say anything. I guess what his point here is, he's saying that he's trying to breach the Speed Force and go back in time. He's trying to rupture the barrier between time and space. And DEIMOS sees that and uses his magic to knock him out and says like, oh, you don't understand the power I have. It's far too much. So then the heroes are like, okay, last resort, guys. This isn't looking too hot. Should we just release Brainiac? And Brainiac says yes. And DEIMOS says no. And then DEIMOS casts a spell to basically get rid of Brainiac. He was just summoning him through a portal. He closes the portal essentially and sends him away. He's like, there, now nobody can mess with Brainiac and I can do everything I want to do. And then through the wall comes Warlord and he says, DEIMOS. And DEIMOS is shocked. He's just like, okay, well, you know, I have the chronal energy still. I'm looking into your past and I see your wife just died. Sucks to be you, bro. So Warlord comes in, they start fighting, but immediately DEIMOS has the upper hand. He uses the chronal energy to age Warlord significantly to the point where he just collapses into dust. And as all of that is happening, the heroes are like, all right, we need to bail. This place is not sturdy, and he's distracted right now. We got to get out of here. So they all start making their way out as fast as they can, but they can't find Yolanda. She is somewhere else. She managed to get separated from the group, so they have to leave her behind. And as the place is coming down, DEIMOS extends a hand to Yolanda and says, I'm your only hope to live. Your friends abandoned you. Let's go. So she takes his hand. We then see, as they escape the building, the heroes are like, all right, well, we got to go back in, find Yolanda, let's do this. So they start looking back over all the rubble they can. Meanwhile, Dick Grayson literally says, somehow, a Batarang is in the wreckage. He doesn't know how. He has no clue why it's here, but there's a Batarang in the wreckage, so he picks it up and he slaps it onto his chest because all of his narration this whole time is basically saying, apparently Dick Grayson in other universes is kind of really close to Batman, so maybe I should do that too. And so he's becoming Batman now. We then follow Yolanda and DEIMOS as they go into Brainiac's, essentially his bedroom. And he's like, look, Yolanda, in a different timeline, you were around at the first crisis. That's going to be very important to me. And she's like, what in the hell are you talking about? He's like, you're Wildcat. Whatever, doesn't matter. Point being is that your friends are coming for you. And she's like, oh yeah, and they're going to stop you. And he's like, Jesus Christ, that's literally my plan. I want them to show. I want everybody to gather together to try to face me. And so he steps into Brainiac's little, I don't know, PA system, and he does a telos, and he calls out to everybody. He says, citizens, stop your fighting. That was stupid, and I have secured your safety. But all I need from you is, like, rent money. You're gonna have to pay me for a price. Probably your loyalty. So, yeah, he's taking control of Telos, and that is essentially where we leave off at. When I recount it like that, it feels like I'm saying a lot has happened. It feels like I'm saying, look at all this forward momentum. We have Yolanda separated from the group. We have DEIMOS taking control of the planet. We have this information on who Telos is. And it sounds like a lot, but as you're reading it, it doesn't feel like a lot. I think mostly it's the Warlord stuff and the fact that the first half of the issue is just kind of talking. It's just kind of like talking without even saying anything. Just, oh yes, I know all of these secrets, Brainiac. And Brainiac just says, let me out. And he says no. And we do that like 5 pages in a row. So it's not an awful issue. I will say I think that this one has the most promise so far. And I think I also said this about last issue, but it has the most promise so far of actually doing something intriguing, but it just doesn't feel like it's going to. It feels like you've got 3 issues left. What could you possibly really do that's going to amount to all that much? And the answer is, I don't think anything. So, yeah, I think this one's probably going to be a 6.5. I'll give it that. It's just kind of a whatever issue for me. It's this weird balancing act of it feels like nothing happened and yet we're still making forward progress. So take that as you will, but 6.5 for this issue. Convergence Superman number 2, written and art by Dan Jurgens. So last issue we had a few big reveals here of Superman fighting against a Flashpoint version of the Justice League, sans Batman, and the Flashpoint version of Superman went and seemingly attacked Lois Lane, and that's a post-crisis pre-Flashpoint Superman and Lois. So we follow Thomas Wayne Batman, Flashpoint, who's asking for a sit rep from the computer, like, all right, what's going on? Tell me everything happening. And he recaps the last issue briefly. And it's like, yeah, okay, but like, what else? And they point out that Superman is most likely Kryptonian, but that's about all they got. And Thomas puts forward, remember Flashpoint? I sacrificed my world expecting non-existence for another world. If he's from that other world, then we need to be on his side. And the computer's like, there's no way of knowing. And he's like, grumble, grumble. So we go back over to the fight, and we see Abin Sur takes out Jimmy's flying car, and as it's about to crash down, Superman throws off the rest of the people attacking, and he safely lands on the ground, and he's like, hey, Jimmy, thanks for the assist, but like, I'm working solo, so please leave. And he's like, who are those guys? They kind of look like heroes we know. And Jimmy's like, don't worry about it, Jimmy, I'll take care of this. So at that point, Shazam, or Captain Thunder, I think he's called here, is like, hey, we have to do this. We have to save our world. It's the only way to do it. And so Cyborg fires off a big blast. Superman just tanks it, and he's like, all right, let's do this the hard way. And he heat visions Cyborg's arm to the point that it melts. And he's like, oh, he's a Kryptonian. Same as Subject 1, but he's better. To which point Captain Thunder's like, all right, that means I can cut loose. So he tackles him in through a few mountains, and Superman takes a few punches. But that's where Superman hears Lois crying out for help. And he's like, all right, we're done. And he kicks Captain Thunder off of him, throws him into a mountain, and says, like, I'm sorry that you guys are so absolutely awful, but, like, I don't have time for you. And so he just pushes him down to a mountain and says, like, I've got other things to do. However, Abin Sur is unwilling to let him leave, so he's blasting him with Green Lantern energy. And Superman's like, bro, I thought Green Lanterns were peacekeepers. And he's like, yeah. Oh, I'm defending this planet. Once we're beaten, then I'm willing to talk. But Jimmy Olsen shows up for the assist, despite being told to leave, and he blasts Abin Sur with a laser from behind. And so Superman's like, oh, hey, I heard your colleague Lois Lane calling out. And Jimmy's just like, oh, well, then you better go find Clark Kent, because it's going to be a big important thing, I'm sure. And he's like, all right, I'll go find him. Bye, Jimmy. So at that point, Batman's like, wait a minute, hold on, Lane's still alive? This changes everything, because knocking at the door is Lois Lane. She's in the Batcave, along with Subject 1, aka Flashpoint Superman. And he's like, look, I couldn't risk getting her to a hospital. She's in labor, and you're a doctor. I need your help. And immediately Batman's like, how the hell did you find this place? And he's just like, I have x-ray vision. Like, what, do you expect secrets? I know that you're a doctor. Please, you have to help her. And she's like, oh, that's the one from Other Gotham. Like, I don't know if we should trust him. And Superman's just like, no, this is Lois Lane. I love Lois Lane. No matter the timeline, she's going to be saved. Like, I'm not going to say that she's the enemy. So at that point, Batman leans into Lois and just be like, hey, you're with Superman, aren't you? And he's like, yeah, and where I come from, you two are friends. And Batman's just like, this is getting more complicated. So Superman flies back to their apartment. There's no clue as to where she's gone, except that Lois left the webcam on her computer running. And so he obviously sees Subject 1 saying, like, oh, I'm taking you with me. And at that point, Abin Sur comes into the apartment as well. And Superman's like, hey, man, I don't want to do this. I got other things to do. And he's like, no, I get it. Look, the way you flew away, you weren't looking for a fight. I understand. You're not an enemy. And so Superman goes to, like, I've got to leave now. Whatever epiphany you've got, bye. And he's like, wait, you already know where she is? And it's like, yeah, Batcave. I'm very clear what's going on here. And he's just like, okay, well, you also need to learn about the Kryptonian. Like, he lost his Lois Lane, so he's clearly very attached to your Lois. To which point Superman's like, well, then that means he's not going to get hurt. Anyway, really got to go now. Bye. And he's like, wait. Did you want to hear the story about Batman, about how he lost his son? And Superman's like, no, I don't. I know all of this, more or less. That part's a bit weird, but bye. And so he flies off. And he realizes that if Superman took Lois, it must be because it's time, that Lois is going into labor. So immediately as she's sitting down in Batman's cave, our Superman just knocks Flashpoint Superman through a wall, and Lois is like, oh, does that sound like thunder? And Batman's like, no, it sounds like bombs. And then Lois realizes, oh, no, wait, that's just my husband punching. And so we see our Superman standing behind Batman, and he's like, is there anyone who can't find this place? Seriously? This is a bit much. And so Superman's like, oh, yeah, hey, Lois made it easy, because she was wearing a headset the whole time. Like, she was able to basically send out the beacon as to where she was. So at that point, Superman and Batman just have a brief little thing of like, are we good? Are we good? All right, we're fine. Cool. Anyway, I'm going to tend to my wife. So Superman wants to take her to a hospital, doesn't want to be in the cave. He's like, at this point, this might be safer because Captain Thunder's still going to be looking for you, and he doesn't know where this place is. And they feel an earthquake happening, which happens across pretty much all the books. So Lois is like, hey, I didn't really see myself giving birth in the Batcave. This is not up to plan. And he's like, oh, life is never as you planned it, but we're going to do what we can. And he turns to Thomas and is just like, hey, can you deliver the baby? And Batman says, no, that was that was a lifetime ago. I'm not really a doctor, but you're Superman. I'm sure you can figure it out. So we get a little montage, time passing. It's about 2 hours. And as Lois pushes, she finally gives birth, and it's a baby boy. And as they pass along, Superman thanks Thomas for all the tools and assistance and all that sort of stuff. And Thomas is like, hey, did you know Bruce? Like, you knew him? And he's like, yeah, he's a good man. And Thomas is like, whatever you do, you have to protect that child. Got it? And Superman's like, absolutely. Count on it. So we see that Lois is suggesting names, naming it Jor after Jor-El. And he's like, no. Hey, let's name it after the human. And he's like, all right. So his name is Jonathan Samuel Kent. And they say, I love you together as they cradle their new son. The only thing that matters from Convergence. I can't say that with definitiveness, but like it seemed like they were bending over backwards to make this the only thing that stuck. So yeah, the birth of John Kent, obviously a landmark major issue. It's good. It's a solid issue. I mean, it doesn't feel like it matters for Convergence. In a way, it's a horrible tie-in issue because like the event itself of like you got to fight each other like doesn't matter. It does not matter at all. The only thing they have here is making it so that he's giving birth in Flashpoint Batman's timeline or Batcave. Like it's weird. It's a different thing, but like the actual thing of the birth and saying that happened, like, nah, it doesn't matter at all. So it's a bad tie-in, but it's a great issue. So I think I'm probably just going to ignore the fact that it's a tie-in and say this is a solid 8 out of 10. It's definitely well written. It's very well done. Obviously, Dan Jurgens has had his hand in most of Superman's major life events, so it's good he managed to get his hands on this one too. But no, I really enjoyed it, and I'm trying to get it in single issue format, and it's an absolute impossibility because everybody wants to keep their copies. So if you know where I can find one, please reach out. Convergence, the question, number 2, written by Greg Rucka, art by Cully Hamner. So last issue we had Question teaming up with Huntress and, shock surprise at the end, Batwoman to go track down the Two-Face of their world because he's not such a bad guy and he's just mentally ill, but he really wants to die. So he's just going out on a suicide mission. We open up this issue with a man named, I believe it's Hernando, who turns out is the father of Renee Montoya. He's in a hospital bed, deathbed. He's barely clinging to life. And his wife and son are there, but the one thing he keeps calling out for is like, oh, where's my daughter? Where's Renee? Meanwhile, we see that the bunch of them are looking over rooftops, seeing what they can do. And Huntress is cleaning up the wound that Question has on the back of her head from being hit by Two-Face, and Batwoman's just like, okay, if you two are done being so sickeningly sweet, we were trying to track down Two-Face, and Question's just like, I know where he is, we just need to get ahead of him. So she starts sleeping off, and at that point Batwoman goes over to Huntress being like, so you two are pretty close? And Huntress like, I thought that was you and her. And she's like, nah, that was forever ago. And Huntress like, yeah, okay, wink. So they start chasing afterwards. We then go over to Two-Face, who's making his way down to a gang called the D-Cells. I have no idea if we've met them before. It seems that this may be the gang that like he was attacking earlier. Before they recognize it's Two-Face, they try to come up after him, and Two-Face just kneecaps their biggest, baddest member, and they're just like, whoa, okay, Two-Face, hey, we don't want any trouble. And he's like, good, neither do I. And he tosses him a duffel bag of weapons saying, I'm on a recruitment drive. How many of you are in? So we then follow Question and the bunch as they come to the Gotham City courthouse, and Question's like, Two-Face is going to be in there, guaranteed. So at that point, Question lays down, all right, I'm going to go in, you guys cover, take out the guards and all that. And they're like, wait. And he's like, wait for what? That's the plan. That's what we're doing. What are we waiting for? And Huntress asks, like, what do you mean by take care of Two-Face? And he's like, that man is in mental trouble. He is like suicidal. I have to go help him. He's a sick man looking to end his life. And Huntress is like, okay. Or he's about to go take the life of an innocent man, because we don't know who the Harvey Dent of this universe is, but the Harvey Dent of our universe is a mass murdering serial killer. And she's just like, all right, whatever, help me or don't, I'm going in there. So she leaps off the building. We then see that Two-Face and all of his gang members have infiltrated the courthouse, and Two-Face manages to track down the other member, or the other Harvey Dent. This one never became Two-Face. He's just a normal guy, and he seems to be working for the courthouse or something like that. And he recognizes, it's like, Jesus, man, what happened to your face? And he's like, yeah, the inside became the outside. So, Harvey, do you know what's right from wrong? And he tosses over his coin. And the other Harvey's like, all right, I try to. And he's like, cool, I'm glad one of us can. So we see a bunch of the people with guns that Two-Face loaded up. They start getting knocked out by Question. Huntress and Batwoman, they all split up, start taking out the gang members as they're being fired upon. Batwoman seems to do most of the work. To which point Huntress comes out and says, like, geez, man, it's professional courtesy. You could leave one for me to knock around a little bit. And she's like, you're sleeping with my ex. I have the right to be pissed off at you. To which point Huntress says, excuse me? First off, I'm not sleeping with Renee. We are roommates. Second off, it's your ex. So jealous much? And she's just like, oh, well, I'm embarrassed now. And she's like, yeah, well, you should be. And they look around for Renee. She's already gone. There's a great sequence here where there's two goons down a hallway. Renee tosses her hat over top of them, distracting them, forcing them to look at the hat. Then she runs up, does an acrobatic move where she slams both of their heads down into the floor and cartwheels perfectly to land her head in her hat, and then keeps running down the hallway. Great motion sequence. So Renee eventually comes down to the Superior Courtroom, expecting to see a bloodbath or a fight between the Harveys. Turns out they're kind of just discussing the legal ramifications of what happens if the non-Two-Face Harvey kills Two-Face. And Two-Face is like, I'm telling you to do it. You have to defend your world. You can say that it's self-defense because if you don't fight me, your world will be at risk. And then the other Harvey's just like, I can't do that because it's still murder. Like, you have not committed a crime here yet. You are an innocent man. And so at a certain point, Question's holding back. Harvey's just like, hey, look, you're the good man. You're the judge. You have to do it. And so he takes the gun from Two-Face. Question then runs in, jumps in the middle, takes the shot instead of Two-Face. Huntress and Batwoman both see this. And for whatever reason, as this happens, as Question takes the shot, the good Harvey gets pulled into a portal. He just is like, oh, I didn't mean to. And he goes back. Batwoman starts going over to Question. It's just like, how do we get this stupid mask off? Renee pushes a button on the belt to release it. And Batwoman starts doing CPR on her, which of course Renee wakes up in the middle of, and they just start kissing. They start sharing a moment. And she's like, oh yeah, the things I do for getting to kiss you again. And Batwoman's immediately like, I thought you were dead. And she's like, yeah, I lied. So the suit was made out of Kevlar, easily took a shot. But Two-Face is like, why did you do that? Like, what? And Huntress points out, like, oh, she did it because she can't save her father. Like, this is all about, like, a redemption thing. So Two-Face says, well, what do I do now, Renee? And she says, you just be the better man. So we get Renee explaining in narration that when she came out to her father, she was disowned. Her father didn't want anything to do with her, and she hated him for that, but she hated herself for hating him. So she does eventually make it up into the hospital room, and she's like, oh, hey, Dad, I'm here. It's okay. You can let go now. And the dad just reaches out, touches her face, and says, like, oh, my perfect little girl, I love you. And she says, I love you too. And then the father ends up dying. So we see her sometime later emerge from the hospital room. Kate and Huntress are there and just like, hey, are you good? Is everything fine? And she just nods. She sees sitting on a hospital gurney is her Question hat with Two-Face's coin sitting on it. And so she picks it up, and the narration basically says, like, life is a zero-sum game. It's all about conflict, but, like, that's the point, because you get to make mistakes, and if you're lucky, you get to make up for them. You get to make them right. So It's honestly, I was a little bit let down by the first issue. I think that it was a weak opening just because it didn't feel like it was doing enough to really let me in on this world I wasn't too familiar with. But I think this issue more than made up for that and makes it so that combined, these two issues are really top tier story writing. I really like the way they tied everything together. They made it an actual story arc for Question for Renee, saying why she cared so much about Two-Face. It's a whole father issue thing. It ended on a nice little poignant moment. I think it's very good. I really have nothing bad to say about it. So I think for everything that this issue probably does, I'm probably going to give it the 8.5. I really like the way they handled it. My only real critique is the end of the quote-unquote good Harvey. He got portaled out, and I don't know why. If we get an explanation for that later, cool, but it just kind of seems like out of nowhere. So tiny little critiques, but overall great issue. Convergence Justice League number 2, written by Frank Tieri, art by Vicente Cifuentes. So last issue we had a bunch of the women of the Justice League were out enjoying a night out on the town. We had a whole thing where I think Zatanna is like a superstar or something. But long story short, Flashpoint Aquaman kidnaps Mera and then launches an attack with a whole bunch of sea creatures. So we start underwater. Jessie Quick is using her speed powers to bait some Atlantean ships into shooting each other. And she's like, haha, every time. And the rest of the team is like, yeah, great job, Jessie. There's also an entire armada as well. Like, you took down 2 ships. Not that big of a thing. And so at that point, we see who we believe is Flashpoint Aquaman standing, directing all of these sea creatures to attack the remaining girls here. And they're like, all right, well, that guy's a dick. We might want to punch our own Arthur in our own timeline once all this is said and done. But for now, let's just settle on punching him and go save Mera in the process. So we cut over to Mera, who's talking to Volko. She looks super sad, and she's like, hey, if you're anything like my Volko, you'll know this is wrong. And he's like, yeah, I do, but like, he's the king. He makes the law. And right now, the law is you are not allowed to leave at all. So we see Jade makes a bazooka out of green energy, starts firing it at Aquaman. He eventually starts swatting it away using his trident. So she comes in with a Green Lantern chainsaw, as best I could say it. And she comes in, she's like, all right, now block this. And she blasts him with energy, knocks off his helmet. Turns out it's not Aquaman, it's Ocean Master. Because in this timeline, they're still cool with each other. And so Jade is like, wait a minute, but if you're here, where's Aquaman? So we cut back over to Mera, and we see someone coming in to deliver some drinks. And Volko's like, wait a minute, hold on, we didn't ask for any drinks. And the guard starts attacking the other guard that's there, also attacks Volko. And Mera's like, I don't know what this is, but like, you better watch yourself. And she takes off the helmet. It's Vixen saying like, ho ho, you're being rescued, you dummy. But at that point, in comes Aquaman. Turns out he was posing as the guard, and it's like, you're not the only one capable of deception. So we see the rest of the crew are all fighting against sea monsters, but they're just more and more crawling out from this crevice. And so Zatanna is called upon to close it up, and so she casts a spell, which, as far as I could tell, just covers it in a layer of like magical energy. But then this giant ass lobster looking kaiju thing breaks through it. Just immediately, it's that powerful. And they're all like, oh, you were saying, Zatanna? So back over at Vixen, she's fighting against Aquaman using the powers of the nearby marine animals. She's using Electric Eel to shock, Whale for the strength, and she's like, aha, all these sea creatures, and I'm using all their powers. To which point Aquaman says, stop. And immediately Vixen's like, wait a minute, hold on, why can't I attack you? And he's like, you idiot. You're using marine animal powers. I can control marine animals. I can control you. So now go pick up that guard's gun and blow your brains out. And she does it. She dies. Like, Vixen shoots herself in the head. And Mera's like, oh my God, no. And she goes to attack Aquaman. And Aquaman's just like, oh, well, oh, wait, hold on. Sorry. She blows her brains out. But there's one panel saying, she fought it, she pulled away at the last second, but we never see her again, so she's dead. I think this was just editorial saying, like, maybe don't. But either way, Mera goes to attack Aquaman. And he's like, oh, I don't think you understand, Mera. I've already won. And we see the rest of the Justice League is being brought in. They're all attacked by all the monsters and Atlantean guards. And Aquaman's like, look, with all the intruders dealt with, no one else is coming for you. You might as well accept it. And then all of a sudden, Supergirl comes in out of nowhere, punches in the glass, and immediately starts knocking out Aquaman. Zaps him with heat vision, does all this. She's like, I have had just about enough of you. And as she is making absolute short work of him, he scrambles to go pick up his trident. She's like, go ahead. I'm just going to shove it up your backside. Like, that's literally all that's going to happen here. But as he picks it up, it starts glowing with green energy. And it turns out that the moment that they were told they had to fight, they immediately did a whole bunch of recon and surveillance and stuff like that. And they figured out that the energy signature coming from Supergirl is the same as some green rocks that were at the bottom of the bay. And they thought, well, maybe she'll be weak to them. And lo and behold, it's kryptonite, so she is. So at that point, he's about ready to stab her with the trident, saying like, oh, this is it, my victory. But then Mera says, stop, wait, hold on. I get it now. And he's like, what? And she's like, no one has ever been willing to go so far for me, not even my own Arthur. You are my mighty warrior king. You are my love. And she leans in and kisses him. And then all of a sudden, Aquaman's eyes go wide as the blood literally starts pouring out of his mouth. And of course, it's Mera's ability to control water. She's just using it on blood. And she's like, yeah, die slow, you bastard. Also, she stabbed him. That happened too. But regardless, he stumbles over into his throne. All the rest of the girls are like going free. They're safe to go. And as he's bleeding out, Mera's like, yeah, he says he controls all these people through fear and whatnot. But let's see how loyal the sharks get with blood in the water as we see sharks literally descending upon Aquaman. So, it's a dark issue. I'll give it that. I mean, that realizing that they pulled their punch on Vixen there kind of, lessens it a little bit. I was so caught up in the moment, I forgot to read the next panel fully, I guess. But yeah, it's an okay issue, but in joint with the previous issue, which was all about this stuff of like, oh, Zatanna's the star and nobody else knows how to deal with this stuff and all. Like, it just is so separate. It feels so completely unnecessary to even have that first part. You could have just as easily cut out the bit with Zatanna putting the shield over the like hole that the monsters are crawling out of, and then inserted 2 pages of Aquaman kidnapped Mera, we have to go help her. And like that, it's a 1-issue story now. The last issue had nothing to do with any of that. So yeah, it's not as great as it could have been. I think I'm gonna say this one is a 6.5. That's just kind of where I'm feeling with it. It's not that it's doing anything particularly wrong. It just doesn't feel like it was worth the time. It's just kind of mediocre on that front. So it sucks, but it happens. So 6.5. Convergence Batgirl number 2, written by Alisa Kwitney, art by Rick Leonardi. So last issue, we were kind of telling the story out of time, but long story short was Stephanie Brown was selected to be the hero for Gotham to fight against someone else in some other part of it. But she retired from being Batgirl, so Cassandra and Tim basically had to give her a rundown real quick to get her back into shape. And then she's teleported out into a desert. This opens up with where we kind of opened with the last issue, which is Grodd is around and he's beating the crap out of Cassandra, and Catman's there. Catman was the enemy that Batgirl had to face against. But we cut back to yesterday first, where they just got teleported to the desert. They're looking around trying to figure out what's going on. And as Batgirl's like, oh, is this the same place? Like, what do we do? How do we handle this? And Cassandra's just like, look, it doesn't matter. This is a battlefield. That's what matters. And Steph's just like, no, look, there's only 2 people fighting today, me and the adversary. This is like not the ideal location for me. Like, this is not what's going on. Also, where's the opponent? Like, we're out here in the open. Why can't we see them? And they started talking about it briefly. It's just like, oh yeah, well, I hope that we can think of something before my swagger runs out. But Cassandra points out, like, quiet, we don't know where the opponent is. And we see Catman is actually watching them from behind some rocks, like a full canyon away. And she's like, oh my God, you're right. Like, what if they were hearing us? What if they heard all that? Hell, what if they're psychic? What if I'm fighting someone who's psychic? I can't defend against psychic stuff. I think about all my thoughts all the time. I can't do that. And so she's psyching herself out, and Tim starts like calming down, just being like, hey, look, it's fine. You're the champion here. You will fight for us and you will succeed. That's what's going to happen. And she's like, okay, but like, there's only supposed to be one-on-one. You guys managed to come through with me. What happens if they manage to bring along teammates as well? Like, I could be totally outclassed here. Cut to the present. We see, all that stuff that happened in the first issue happened. She ran into Catman, and turns out that Grodd is actually the enemy of Catman. They were fighting over in his world, and then they both got pulled through the portal. So now that's happening. And it's literally just because, like, he's from Cape Town, South Africa. It's a whole thing where Grodd was trying to expand. When the dome was up, Grodd became an idiot. It's just a normal dumb gorilla. So they kept him in a zoo, but then he got his powers back, and now they're attacking each other. So as we see the little flashback of Catman going through the portal as he's trying to basically suicide bomb with Grodd, he gets dumped in the desert, and he's like, yeah, I saw you guys. I watched for a little while, seeing what was up. I guess Grodd did the same thing. But then they come across Grodd as he is attacking Cassandra, and Cassandra's just doing her best, but not much is happening. And he's just like, oh, well, aren't you supposed to be brave and clever here? Batgirl, what do you have to say? And she's like, I don't know what to say. Take me instead. And he's just like, I don't have to choose. And he just throws Cassandra into the ground, just absolutely breaking her. And then Tim comes in, starts attacking, and we see that Catman's trying to direct Steph out of the way, but Steph is just like, no, I can't. And so she gets grabbed by Grodd. We then cut to yesterday, where we see an earthquake is happening, and Tim like is holding her in the same sort of way by her arms and protecting her from it. Cassandra's like, hey, the earthquake's over, you can let go of each other now. And so they start having a little heart-to-heart with each other as they hike through the canyon. Turns out that when Steph retired, Tim kind of just shied away from her, didn't ever really talk to her, and no matter how many times she reached out, didn't even officially like break up with her either, just stopped talking entirely. And he's just like, look, I want you to know I never stopped caring about you, but like, part of what made our thing a thing was that we were both part of this lifestyle. And when you stopped, I just didn't know how to deal with that. And Steph is like, oh, what? But now that I'm Batgirl again, you think everything's going to be fine? We can be a couple again? And Tim, in his infinite autism, is like, well, I mean, yeah, if you want to be, like, I think we could take a chance, get back together. And she's just like, you are unbelievable. He's like, what'd I say? And she just pops him upside the head, leaves him there in the desert. So we cut back to the Grodd fight. Steph manages to grab a hold of some of the fur on his face and rip it out, which causes just enough pain for Catman to sneak up from behind and start laying slashes on him. Turns out Tim is the one being psychically attacked. He's being controlled by Grodd to attack Steph. She manages to land a solid kick on his face, though, seemingly knocking him out for the fight, which leaves just Catman and Steph against Grodd. And it's just like, okay, we got to figure out a way to end this now. That's the only way we can do it. And Steph says, look, I'm asking you to surrender. And if you don't, I will. That's the only way we can stop Grodd. We can't beat him by sheer force. We have to, like, do this in order to just separate him entirely. And he's like, what, are you crazy? What's going on? And she explains their position, says, like, look, if we keep going, we're going to lose. And Catman says, look, all right, Grodd has already slaughtered everyone I care about back home. I don't really care if my place survives because there's nothing else to go back to. I'll go ahead and surrender. And he takes off his mask and like points to his chin, says, hit me. And she just unloads, makes the punch seem as real as possible, just in case it matters. And she stands over, starts gloating over Catman, to which point then the gray goo ball things that Telos uses to teleport them through start surrounding Catman. And Catman's like, I gotta goad Grodd into following me. So he says, hey, Grodd, is it true what I hear about gorillas, that out of all the primates, they have the smallest, And Grodd's like, that's a lie, and he grabs hold of Catman, and they both get taken away up into the portal. So Tim's now coming back to his senses as the little silver balls start gathering around him and Steph. They grab Cassandra too, but she is in poor shape, and they got to get her to a hospital quick. So we cut over to the hospital. Cassandra's out of it, and we see Tim has brought actual, honest-to-God, real coffee, to which Steph is absolutely endeared. She's like, oh my God, thank you so much. And at that point, Cass starts waking up and just like, hey, what's going on? Did we win? And just like, well, not exactly. Catman surrendered. And Tim's like, yeah, the fight would be over and we could take Grodd back home. And they're like finishing each other's sentences. And Cassandra's just like, oh my God, please stop, the both of you, go get a room. And they're just like, all right. And so they walk outside the hospital. They share an awkward moment before Tim's like, screw it. And he just kisses Stephanie. We see cut to, I guess, later that night. They're back at Steph's apartment. They've lit a crap load of candles and they just start making out on the couch. And he's like, I don't want to be rushing you or anything like that. But as they start making out, she's like, oh, God, my ribs. And he's like, yeah, you also were like hurting the back of my head, which is still really tender. Also, my kneecap's messed up. I don't feel like I can breathe properly. Maybe we should just cuddle. How about we just cuddle for now? So they cuddle up on the couch and they say how nice it is. And yeah, that's the ending narration is Steph saying, like, I don't want my city to be destroyed, but if it is, I'm okay with it ending right here. So I'll admit I didn't see them really revisiting the romance angle from the first issue. That kind of is just set up and paid off in this one, but I think it's nice. I think it's sweet. Yeah, I don't really think the fight was that interesting, but I think it was an interesting solution. The fact of, it's not even a matter of Steph versus Catman. It's a matter of they just need to stop Grodd. And so this is the way they do it. And I think that that's an interesting way to write the issue of saying that Steph may not be the most clever. She may not win by brute force either, but she's always thinking outside the box. And I think that's a nice way to do the character. So yeah, I'm going to give this one I'm going to say 7. It probably would be a 7.5, but I was just really kind of iffy on the art. It wasn't quite for me, but it's not bad. It just is like exceedingly house style with a little bit of extra sketchiness to it that just wasn't quite what I was looking for in this. But again, not a bad art style and not a bad issue to match. Convergence, Nightwing and Oracle number 2, written by Gail, Simone, art by Duursema. So last issue we had Hawk people from Thanagar, very ruthless, came down and basically said to Nightwing, like, we're gonna take your whole town and kill you guys unless you surrender. They of course did not surrender, but we did have we had Barbara basically saying, hey, we can't fight them, please don't do this. And Nightwing's like, we gotta fight for our town. But it turns out Barbara is Oracle and she had a whole plan set in motion already. So we see her setup is basically saying the moment that the domes came down, we saw that the Hawk people had very powerful drones called Absorbicons that can hear and see everything, and they have nuclear potential, but there are also more powerful drones from Telos that are making sure everybody is staying within the borders and all that sort of stuff. So with all that on the board, she started putting in her own stuff and started seeing what she could. But first we have to deal with Nightwing. It's the agreed upon time. Hawkman and Hawkgirl are waiting for them to arrive, and they're not showing. And then all of a sudden they see the Batwing, or whatever it is here, starts flying in towards them as they're on like the edge of a cliff, and just like, oh, what a fool. He gave up any hope of surprise or whatever like that. And then immediately they realize, oh, wait a minute, he's not pulling up or slowing down. He's going to crash into us. Dear God, shields up. And they put up like what tiny shields they can, but it crashes into him and just like knocks him straight down onto this canyon floor. And they're immediately pissed. Like it didn't do much of anything, but they're convinced because they see the plane in wreckage that he's dead. And they're like, ha, what an idiot. We both still survive. You're dead. What do you like about that? And then in comes a rocket bike, a night bike, or whatever you want to call it. He calls it the Rocket Wing. And It's like, yeah, I wasn't actually in the ship. I was piloting it from down here, and now I'm here to take you on. So he pressed the eject seat. He immediately launched himself at Hawkgirl, and it's just like, all right, you wanted to dance. Let's dance. We then cut over to Oracle, who is doing her thing, saying like, okay, I put a mic and a camera on Nightwing. I can see what they're doing. They're distracted, but they're still listening. They're still listening to everything. So you need to stay here and wait until it's time. And we see a hooded figure standing behind her that we don't know who it is, but it says, I should be the one out there. And he's just like, no, I need you here. Do what you do. So we see Oracle gets loaded up into a chopper, starts making her way out into the desert to assist in the fight, seemingly. But then we cut back over to the Nightwing fight, and apparently Hawkgirl is like, oh, our Absorbicons told us that you were a tumbler, and you just do all these little dances and stuff like that. An acrobat, we're freaking birds, man. We fly. What could you do about that? And they start kicking him down into the dirt, and he flips around, and he's just like, oh, I'm giving you one chance to surrender. You better take it. To which point, her mouth is bleeding at this point, and she's just like, all right, you know what? Do you think you can fight? Let's see what all you got. And so she sends in Hawkman, and Hawkman just starts landing body blow after body blow. It's not looking good, and Hawkgirl's just like, oh, our Absorbicons see all and hear all. There's no way that you can get into victory. And we see that Oracle calls back to the hooded figure saying, you hear that? They said that they can hear everything. Go ahead. Their surveillance bots will hear all of it. And we see the hooded figure cast off the hood, and it's Black Canary. And so the Oracle says, go ahead and have a earful, as Black Canary lets out her canary cry, causes all the glass in this bell tower, clock tower they're in to just start shattering. But it also basically ruptures the eardrums of the Hawk people. They're freaking out as they are picking up on all of this audio from the Absorbicons. Hawkgirl's the first to say, hey, take off your helmet. Like it's the thing that's passing in the audio. She has to go over and take off his helmet for him. And Nightwing's like, well, brought to you down to your knees. How quaint. And at that point, Oracle's flying in overhead. So Nightwings start fighting against them on Oracle's advice, just like, oh yeah, glad to hear you made it. But Hawkgirl sees Oracle flying in the helicopter, just says, all right, enough of this. So she flies up, takes out the helicopter, causes it to crash into the ground. Oracle is still okay, but, paralyzed. So Hawkman finally catches one of Nightwing's fists and it just grabs him by the face, looks like he's about to go in for the kill. Both sides are not doing so hot, but then Hawkgirl, as she comes into Oracle grabs hold of two Eskrima sticks and just like, all right, let's go ahead, let's do this. And Hawkgirl's like, I'm not going to fight you. Like, look how weak you are. You're not worth it. And she's like, oh, I'm sorry. I thought that you were Hawkgirl. Maybe they should call you Buzzard Girl because you just come in and eat off the carry-on. You're just waiting. You're a scavenger. And she's like, okay, maybe I shouldn't have said that because Hawkgirl comes back with a vengeance. Black Canary, meanwhile, is sitting at the computer waiting for something to happen. We're not told what it is, but Oracle's just like, yeah, I just got to wait a little bit longer. I just got to make it around just a tiny bit longer. And she says, yeah, back when I was Batgirl, or back when I knew I wouldn't be Batgirl, I didn't know who I was for a bit, but now I fight dragons, and because they always underestimate me. So as she's fighting against Hawkgirl, she manages to get a hold of Hawkgirl's lance, or mace, whatever you want to call it, and we see that Nightwing has also managed to somehow turn the tables on Hawkman, taking him out as well. So as they are both licking their wounds, Nightwing's like, hey, we win. And she's like, the hell you do? We are not going to be given up. And she calls on the Absorbicons and says, look, Absorbicons, launch the nukes, take Gotham down to the ground, raise it. And Black Canary's still saying, hey, it's still not ready yet. But then as they are getting ready to launch their missiles or whatever, Oracle says, Hawkgirl, you don't need to do this. You know how good I am at hacking systems. To which Hawkgirl scoffs and is like, the Absorbicons were written in a language that was already a dead language on our planet thousands of years ago. There's no way you could possibly hack it. To which point Black Canary finally says, we're good, go ahead. And Oracle says, yeah, but I'm not trying to hack your drones. And we see that the drones of Telos apparently have not upgraded their defense systems, and they start shooting at the Absorbicons, and because they are more powerful, they are able to take them out. So the Hawk people officially have completely run out of moves. Hawkgirl falls to their knees saying, like, my people, my planet is extinct. And Oracle says, shut up. We're going to let you live in Gotham. You can curate the culture of your people. But if you ever get that colonial vibe again, we swear to God we're coming back and we are ending this mess. Got it? So at that point, Oracle and Nightwing start walking back towards the city. Barbara's just like, hey, look, I'm sorry I had to say no to your proposal last issue. I just get scared. And he's like, no, I get it. You want things to be perfect. But, like, nothing's ever going to be perfect, you know? It's just got to be good enough, especially, like, in our world. And he's like, yeah, you know, I'm thinking we just make the best of what we're given. So I'm hoping that you'll ask me again after you kiss me. And she's like, oh, you sure? Neither of us really look our best right now. She's like, yeah, I'm sure. So we then get some cut ahead to seemingly still under the dome. I have no idea how much time passes, but they straight up get married. Apparently they said the ceremony had to be delayed for an earthquake of all things. Then they drive the car back over to the blown out clock tower, and he carries her over the threshold inside and says, well, Barbara, welcome home. And that's the issue. It's well thought out to an extent. Again, this is an issue I'm coming across with a lot of these two shots, whatever you want to call them, the pairings of issues where it feels like the solution is not something that's set up in the first issue. The fact that Barbara could hack into Telos's drones is not something we're even given a mild hint of saying, like, this is the direction we're going in. And I'm not saying you need to have that, but it makes the two issues feel very distinct and separate. It feels like we had the first issue, and that was more focused on, like, who is Barbara in this world and all this stuff, and then separating it out over into, we see what a badass she is here. And yes, there's a bit of a dichotomy to it. The contrast is intentional, but it doesn't feel like there is a linking material between them. So it's not a bad issue. I want to make that clear, but it just kind of feels like it doesn't matter that this was Convergence. This was really just anything. Like, it could have been, they could have easily said, like, oh, I can't hack your drones, but I can hack all of the computers in Gotham, or I can hack your armor, I can hack whatever else. They could make it whatever else. The fact that it was Telos's bots was just because it was what was there. So I'm going to say this is a 7. Again, still a fine issue. It just combined together, the two Nightwing / Oracle issues as a pair kind of feel a little bit weak, but this one was good at the very least. Convergence, the Atom, number 2, written by Tom Peyer, art by Steve Yeowell. So last issue we had a very crazy Atom who's gone, like, full mental disturbed, could only grow his right hand to a comically large size, was selected as a combatant against Barracuda from, I think, the Extremists. Turns out at the end of the issue that his I'm forgetting his name, but Ryan Choi, his compatriot, whatever you want to call it, protege, that's the word I was looking for, was actually not killed by Deathstroke, but was actually still alive. Kind of. So this issue picks up where we thought last issue he just, like, reappeared, was actually still there. Turns out he wasn't. So long story short, it's a whole bunch of shrinking and growing in the middle of this fight scene, and it's like, whatever. Long story short, apparently, when the Atom shrinks, their mass gets sent into an alternate dimension. When Ryan Choi was murdered by Deathstroke, he subconsciously willed some of his mass into that alternate dimension, and then his consciousness just kind of followed, and he's been trapped in that dimension. And the reason that Atom's hand was only able to get big was because that mass that he transported over, he was only able to, like, push into the Atom's hand. Like, that's the whole bit of it. It's so wildly insane. But regardless, Ray Palmer makes the point of saying, like, oh, like, I you were just trying to survive. You were doing what you could. I was dismissing your cries for help as a symptom of myself, and that's not right. That's the way that fascists think, like Barracuda up there. And then he grows and punches Barracuda in the face. So at that point, Ray points out, like, hey, all right, if you were able to push the mass and all that, why can't you make yourself a body? And he's like, oh, it's all too tied up in you and I and all that. I wouldn't even know how to begin separating all of it. And Ray looks down in his hand and he's like, huh. And Brian's just like, Ray, don't you do it. Don't you? I really don't mind being just the voice in your head for right now. It's fine. And he's like, hey, you left some people behind and they're hurting and I'm hurting too. And that's not okay. All right. And so he's like, look, you've benefited me. That's privilege. Like, he's pulling out that he's saying that he's privileged and that he feels bad for that. So he's like, all right, you have 10 seconds once this happens. And so he goes back into the fight and says, hey, Barracuda, check out my big fist. And he does a real wide, slow swing. And Barracuda chops off his hand. And Ray's just like, oh, God, oh, it hurts so much. And Barracuda's like, you amateur, you made that too easy. To which point then Ray takes off his belt and throws it over to the hand, which is now like walking on the fingers, like the thing. It starts morphing into a humanoid figure, and we see it's Ryan. So Ryan catches the belt, and he shrinks back down super small and starts fighting against Barracuda. Sure, whatever. He manages to get inside of his, I guess, skin, armor, whatever, and twists up his arm and like snaps it in half. So now that his arm is messed up, he's like, yep, there's no way he was going to be able to swing his trident anymore. We won the fight. And so Barracuda disappears in a puff of smoke, and Ryan and Ray follow suit. We then cut to Ray, who wakes up in a hospital room. There's a woman there. I think it's Maria, the woman from before, who's like, oh, Ray, it's me. What do you want? And he's like, Ryan, where's Ryan? Oh, Ryan Choi. And he's just like, oh, I don't know what you were the only one to return. We didn't see anything else, but you won it. Like, we're just waiting to see if the other champions won their stuff. And Ray's just like, I didn't win it. Ryan won it. And he's like, Ray, there was nobody else. But check this out. And they walk him over to the window, and we see all the people who like made fun of him before. Huge crowds have gathered outside the hospital, basically cheering his name, saying like, yeah, you did it. You saved our town. Thank you. So we see Deathstroke is across on an opposite building, just waiting to attack. But Ray starts freaking out. He's just like, where's Ryan, though? He's the one who did it. He came back with me. And Maria's like, he didn't. It must have just been a dream or something. He's like, no, where's my hand? If it was all just a dream, what happened to my hand? And where's my belt either? To which point Maria goes over to the closet and pulls out the belt and says, it's right here. I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. So later that night, we see him trying to sleep. All of a sudden, the door cracks open. He jolts awake, tries putting on his Atom belt, but he's too slow. And in comes Deathstroke. And Deathstroke's like, ha, you stupid bastard. And he's just like, what do you want, Deathstroke? I'm literally laying here without an arm. I'm unarmed. And he's like, yeah, well, I tried to live a basic life. And then you had to bring up the fact that Deathstroke existed. And you made people remember me. And so now I've got to take that out on you. I still don't think that makes any sense, but regardless, he says like, oh, and it's all because you can't handle death. People die. It's what happens. And then out comes Ryan Choi, who punches Deathstroke in the face and says, except when they don't. And he basically makes the retcon of saying like, yeah, I knew that he wouldn't be able to resist attacking Ray when he's weak. So yeah, that's entirely a plan that we were doing here. So the two of them pair up and they're like, hey, I've got an idea. Let's see if this works. And they wrap a Atom belt around Ray's wrist and then another Atom belt around Deathstroke's wrists. And he basically says like, Ryan, what are you doing? He's like, trust me, Ray, go with it. And they activate the belts. And we see that Ray has his hand back. It is fully regrown. And they cut over to Deathstroke, who now has tiny little baby hands. And he's like, oh, what have you done? So at that point, there's an earthquake, and they don't cause any attention to it. It's just like, oh, that was weird, an earthquake. Anyway, moving on. So we see outside of Maria's I don't know, diner, whatever it is they're at. They hop on the bus together with Maria and just like, oh yeah, well, we gotta hope that our city's gonna live, that we're gonna be able to win this. And, you know, I'm sure that Batman and all them, they'll be able to take care of that. But the Atoms, like, who'd ever believe we could? And they share a little laugh together. The end. All right, I'll be the first to admit, the first issue didn't really stick with me. It's been a month since I read it as of reading this issue, and I remember that Adam was crazy, and I remember that Ryan Choi was seemingly killed by Deathstroke and then was back. But then we immediately open up with, and I kind of glossed over, he's not there? Like, it seems like at the end of the last issue, he's physically there. He's standing there. But then all of a sudden, it's a ghost thing, and it's actually more of a mirage, and he had to like shrink down to a super small level to maybe see him for real, or maybe it was still a ghost thing. It's very wishy-washy, very up in the air. It's not that it's poorly written. I think it's kind of just pacing, is strangely enough. I think that all of the details are there. They're just presented in such a weird cadence, in such a weird like pattern, that it doesn't feel right. Like the fact that we have to interrupt the bit where Ryan's saying like, oh, hey, don't worry about it, that like you thought I was a voice in your head. I can totally see why you think that. With Ray saying like, no, that's how fascists think. Like, it doesn't flow. There's not a right flow here. All the info is there. It's just in the wrong order. So yeah, I can't say that I really liked this issue. I think it's doing something mildly inventive with the idea of this like redistribution of mass. I don't know a lot of Atom comics, so I don't know if that's something he does frequently, but it seems creative. But beyond that, it's barely a Convergence issue. It's barely worth that. So I think this one's probably just going to be like, honestly, like a 5.5 for me. I can't really even give it the 6. It's just a little bit too confusing for its own good. Or if it's not confusing, if I'm just overly reading into it, it's just not good. So 5.5. Convergence Speed Force number 2, written by Tony Bedard, art by Tom Grummett. So last issue, The Flash and his 2 kids, Wally and his 2 kids, have teamed up with, I can't remember the guy's name, Fastback? Yeah, Fastback, the cartoon turtle, against Flashpoint Diana and her army of Amazon warriors. And we open up with this issue where Wally's basically trying to talk Diana down, just being like, look, we're friends where we came from. Like, I don't think that that's something that should be overlooked here. And Diana's like, the fact that I would be friends with somebody who brings children into a battlefield along with a cartoon turtle speaks volumes to how inferior your Diana is. So, yeah, no, we're not going to be able to do that. And they basically say, like, look, I don't care if you call me a friend. I'm going to fight you. And Wally's like, look, I'm just asking you to not be a puppet. Like, maybe don't listen to Tello so blindly. And she's like, oh, trust me, I'm not being manipulated here. So Wally goes in, tries to just end it quick, supersonic punch. However, Diana reacts, and reacts plenty quickly, and does like a flip over Wally's head. She starts charging him with the sword and says like, yeah, I got the speed of Hermes, bro. I guess your Diana doesn't have that. And he's like, ah, crap. So as she's being attacked, or she's attacking him with the sword, he tells Fastback, hey, get my kids out of here, get them out of town. Like, as long as I don't think about them, they won't be teleported back to me via Speed Force weirdness. So he's just dodging every sword swing from Diana, doing what they can and saying like, yeah, my Amazons are out laying waste to your town right now, but this is between me and you. So Fastback grabs Jay and Irie, gets them out of the town, and it's just like, all right, look, we're just going to go back over to the cartoon world, whatever, it should be fine. So we see Flash is just now trying to outrun Diana. She manages to keep up pretty well and tells the Amazons to spread out, do a containment pattern. Wally runs down a dead-end alleyway and just like, haha, even the speed of Hermes can't get her to phase through walls. And so he phases through into a restaurant on the other side, and Diana just smashes through. And he's like, all right, yeah, I probably should have seen that coming. So at that point, he does manage to one-up her a little bit, grabs hold of the sword as she blindly just charges in, flips her through a window, and all the Amazonians are like, oh, my queen, and she's like, shut up, just get the countermeasures ready. And Wally's like, bro, what is your problem? She's like, oh, I trusted a man once and I loved him and I will never trust anyone again. So all the Amazonians throw in these little grenades and he's like, I can outrun the shrapnel, no big deal. But it turns out these are a different type of grenade. And all of a sudden, Wally, like everything in his senses goes wobbly. He's unable to do anything. He starts thinking about his kid. He's like, no, don't think about them. Stop. So we see, I guess we are still in Gotham City, the pre-Flashpoint version. I thought they were going back to the cartoon one, but turns out they return to the city and they are standing on top of a building watching the Amazonians just lay waste to everything. And Fastback's like, Jesus, man, I got to go down and stop them. And the kids are like, hey, we can help too, right? And he's like, what can you do? And Irie's just like, well, I am able to, what exactly did she say? I'm able to pass through stuff, and Jay is able to get strong. And they're just like, he's like, I don't think passing through stuff is going to be enough to take on these Amazonians, so just stay here. And so Fastback goes down, starts knocking the Amazonians around. But as the kids are cheering them on, we find that they start getting attacked by someone off panel. So at this point, Wonder Woman explains what the grenades were. Turns out that Fastback gets hit by them as well. They are using the ability of a captured Count Vertigo to basically throw off Wally's balance so he's unable to properly walk. But Wally's like, all right, I don't need to walk in order to make a vortex. So he spins his arm super quick, blows Diana away, and is just like, I got to get up just long enough to get back to Gotham. But she uses her lasso, wraps around Wally, keeps him still. Meanwhile, the Amazonians are about to kill Fastback because he's been hit with the same stuff, but Jay and Irie come in. Irie grabs hold of all of their weapons when they're not looking, and then Jay comes in and just starts throwing uppercuts. So they're managing to save the day. Meanwhile, Wally is being interrogated by Wonder Woman because she's using the lasso and just like, look, I could use the lasso of truth to find out everything about you, but just looking at you, I can already tell you are a horrible father. Bringing your kids onto the battlefield, like, that's awful. And I bet you're an even worse husband, right? And Wally's like, yeah, I am. And she's like, see, I don't even need the lasso to know this stuff about you. It's super obvious. And she's like, yeah, well, I've known that for a year. I've screwed up significantly, kept Linda from our kids, and I've had all this pain, but I also know this. You said that you loved someone before, and hell no, you haven't, because someone as mean as you could not have possibly have felt the trueness of love that I feel for my wife and kids. So, screw you. But because he's talking about the wife and kids, in come Jay and Irie. They teleport in. She's still holding all the Amazonian weapons, and Wally's like, Diana's distracted, I got one shot at this. And he super speeds his leg with relativistic speed to kick Diana in the back of the head enough to, she basically just got hit with the force of a small moon. And so he undoes the lasso from himself, wraps it around her, and gives the kids a hug. Meanwhile, Fastback is still about to be attacked by a bunch of Amazonians. So we see Wally and the kids come in, save Fastback from being attacked, and all of a sudden an earthquake happens. It happens across multiple books. It literally means nothing here either. But they do point out, like, wait a minute, hold on. That felt weird. Not like a normal earthquake. It felt like the sort of earthquake or the sort of temporal forces you get when you are breaching the speed force with like time travel and stuff. But at that point, Jay points out, hey, we still got a bunch of Amazonians we got to take care of. So they're like, Flash just turns to him and just be like, hey, I took out your queen. I'll take you out too. And one of the Amazonians is like, Queen Diana, are you cool? And she's just like, yes, but we should leave and reevaluate our forces. Okay, we got to get out of here. So the Amazonians all bail. And they're like, yeah, they'll be back, no problem. Fastback's like, yeah, I should probably get back to my own cartoon city. I can only assume bad things are happening there. And they're like, oh, you want some help? You helped us. It's only fair we helped you. And he's like, no. I got the whole zoo crew over there. Don't worry about it. So Fastback rushes off. He goes back to his own city. Flash starts getting thanked by all the people around. And he's like, yeah, no problem. But he turns to his kid and says, like, look, I'm not giving up on finding your mom. Like, we are going to see her again. I hope you understand that. And the kids are just like, well, yeah, like, we've learned all about it. Like, we're heroes. We're just like you. And they all stand proudly together as Wally says, yes, our family will be whole again no matter what. So, yeah, it's solid. I think I like the first part more than I like the second part, but it does tell a complete story here, especially of the guilt and all that the Flash feels. I think where it kind of falls apart is the fact that it didn't really do anything to set up Flashpoint Diana in the previous issue, so we had to basically get it all here. And it's not like she's a very deep character, at least not in this book. She doesn't need to be. But like the Vertigo grenades, that stuff probably could have been at least hinted at in the previous issue. Just show like a shadowy figure who is torturing Vertigo or something, just to set her up as a menace and also give the hint that this is happening. Tiny little things. It's still a pretty good duo of issues. I think this particular one is probably going to get just a flat 7 from me. It's not bad, but I like them both more than I like this issue on its own. Convergence, the Titans, #2, written by Fabian Nicieza, art by Ron Wagner. So last issue, we had the Extremists, Lord Havoc, and a bunch of other nobodies fighting against the Titans, and one of the nobodies was able to conjure up Roy Harper's daughter and said, all you got to do is kill your teammates. And he seemingly does. He opens up a gun and fires it in both directions next to him where his teammates were standing. We then open up this issue to show, of course he didn't. Obviously he did not do that. The gunshots zoomed right past their heads and ended up hitting 2 giant steel girders that start collapsing down onto each other, and they actually managed to stop each other as they are right over top of the Extremists. And he's like, you idiot, it didn't even work. You were supposed to, like, you were thinking of toppling those cranes down on us. And he's like, actually it did. And he fires off an arrow and it misses this guy again. And he's like, you miss with your shot. You really are stupid. But it turns out that it was a grapple arrow or something, and it allows him to swing in while the guy's distracted and grab his daughter, and manages to disconnect it just in the nick of time, where Cyborg and Beast Boy arrive as backups. It turns out Cyborg was essentially turned off for the entire time they were under the dome, and Beast Boy was stuck as a pigeon. So they show the rest of the crew coming in, getting ready to fight, while Roy has his daughter and just being like, Pumpkin, is that you? And she's like, I hate it when you call me Pumpkin. He's like, it is you. Great. And we see the rest of the Titans all fighting, but Roy's like, I gotta get my daughter out of here. So he manages to make it to a different part of the city. Everyone's just like, hey man, what's going on? What do we do? And he's like, everyone evacuate, get out of here. I'm going to my bunker. And so he goes down to the bunker with the daughter and just like, hey, what's going on, sweetie? What's the last thing you remember? And she's like, I was at daycare, and then that guy with the fire head got me. And he's like, okay, well, it's all right. I'm not going to let anyone hurt you again. I missed you so much. And she's like, I just saw you earlier today. And he's like, it felt like it's been a lot longer than that. And so we see him watching the fight on the screen, and he's like, look, I can't leave her, but my friends need me. I don't know what the right thing to do is. But then turns out it doesn't matter. This dude, if they ever say his name again, I'll say it. This Dreamweaver guy, he shows up and he's like, ha! I can just teleport inside your bunker. That's a thing I can do. And so he starts opening up all of his cybernetic arm, like missiles and stuff like that, ready to attack. And we see that the Dream guy can just wipe away Leanne. She's gone again. And he's like, no, bring her back. And he starts firing shots. All of them are missing because this dude's just way OP. And he's just like, you refused to kill the other Titans, which means you betrayed your true nature. I don't want to win the battle. I want your soul. So we see that Starfire and the rest of them are aiming against the Extremists, but the Extremists are strong. Apparently they fought against the Justice League and did a pretty damn good job, and they've eradicated their entire planet as well. So yeah, it's not looking good for the Titans, and they know that. They're like, what about the other heroes? Can we get help from anyone else? And Beast Boy's like, nah, everyone's off in their own Convergence books. No one's allowed to cross over. So we see Lord Havoc, who's the Doctor Doom stand-in, blows up the bridge. There's the bridge here, and it just explodes in this huge fireball. And Roy's watching this happen on the screen, and Dreamweaver's just behind the chair, just like, see, all your friends are going to die, your city will be obliterated, and I can spare all of this. I can tell everyone to stop if you take that plunge. Like, we could easily win here, but if you do it, if I corrupt your soul, I will make it so that it's won't be that. So we see, like, Beast Boy's already down. His name's Dream Slayer, apparently. And he's like, yeah, look, she's asking for you. I can hear her in the void. She wants her daddy. Don't you want to let your daughter out? And so Roy opens up the dashboard, reaches towards a big red button, and Dream Slayer's like, yes, do it. Push the button. It's going to happen anyway. Just go ahead and do it. So he pressed the big red button. All of these guns start popping out all around where the Titans are fighting. And they aim at both the Titans and the extremists, but then we see on Roy's targeting, it targets Starfire, and Dream Slayer's like, all right, you buried the truth for too long. You can start anew with your daughter. You just have to do this one thing, purge your sins. And he takes the shot and hits Starfire. And so Dream Slayer brings back Leanne, gets him teleported back in, and as they're about to embrace, Dream Slayer's like, finish the job, attack the rest of them, go ahead and do it. So he locks on the targets to all the rest of the Titans, and Dream Slayer's like, all right, you can have your daughter back. I've crushed your spirit. This is so much fun. To which point, as soon as he gets Leanne, he's like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to make sure he never does anything to you ever again. And we see he says a vocal command or does something else, switches all the targets over to the extremists instead, so it starts firing at them. And everyone on the battlefield's like, what the hell is happening? Where did these guns come from, and why are they shooting random people? I don't know what's happening here. But we see that they're locked onto the extremists and hitting all that. Dream Slayer's just like, you double-crossed me. That's dishonorable. How dare you? So then Roy says another thing for his bunker and basically operates an EMP, which disrupts his cybernetic arm, causes it to go basically entirely limp, but also disrupts the teleportation field in Dream Slayer's suit. So it basically makes it so he gets teleported out of there. And Leanne's like, oh, where'd the Batman go? And he's like, away from here. And we see he teleports back onto the field where the Titans are. And he talks to the extremists, and he's like, hey, I saw where the city's weapons are hidden. Let's go have some fun. Extremists, let's bounce. And so he teleports everybody out. Meanwhile, the Titans all fly over. They meet up with Roy, who's on top of a roof, and they're like, oh my god, Leanne's alive. Like, that's crazy. Since when has that been a thing? And it's just like, yeah, no, it's nuts. It's absolutely insane. And then all of a sudden there's this massive explosion in a nearby park, and the Titans are like, that must be the extremists. There's no weapon system there, so they must have like set up base or something like that. I don't know. And Roy's ready to jump into it, but all the rest of the Titans are like, hey, your daughter's back. We don't know if we're going to win this. It's going to be tight regardless, but like, you need to spend whatever time you can with your daughter. We'll take care of this. And she's just like, he basically says like, you can't beat them all. And they're just like, hey, whatever. If we're going to go down, we're going to go down like Titans. So they all fly off, ready to go, leaving Roy behind to watch over his daughter, and they smile at each other, and they face it like heroes. I like it. It's such a complicated feeling, because I do like it. I think my main critique, my main problem is they make it so it's the real Leanne where there's no reason it should be. Like, I wanted there to be a little bit more of a reason of why doesn't she just disappear anytime. Like, Dream Slayer's evil. He's just a bad dude. Why would I not be convinced that these are all just mirages all the time? They say that it's the real one, and we just take his word for it, and it seems that it is, but like, I never felt like there was a reason to expect him to not like always make it a mirage or always make it a fake Leanne. So I don't know, a little weird in that front, but in terms of saying, here's a threat the Titans may not be able to live up to, they are extremely dangerous, extremely big problem, and making it so Roy is able to basically atone for his sins and say, yeah, no, I'm not a Titan anymore. I am looking after my daughter, and I like that. That's a great way to basically end his character here. And it feels like it's tying into the larger events overall of saying, no, Convergence, these people will just be fighting. We don't need to always see the end of the fight if we can just imply that the fighting continues. And I like that. It leads to a little bit more of this idea that the event is not just something that's being wrapped up in very convenient ways over and over again in each of these tie-ins. So overall, I really enjoyed this. It's just tiny little nitpicks where it's like, you could have given me just a little bit more to cling on to with the core emotional point, which is the daughter. I didn't feel like that one hit as hard as it should have. So collectively, I'm still going to give it like a 7.5. It's still very good, but I could very easily see this being an 8.5. It's just a little bit shy of that. Convergence, Batman and Robin, #2, written by Ron Marz, art by Dennis Cowan. So last issue, we had a whole big thing of Jason Todd, Red Hood, came back, and Damian doesn't like that because reasons. He also has a sidekick named Scarlet, and he's basically saying like, yep, by the way, I'm going to be around fighting crime. And then when Telos shows up and says, hey, you got to fight, in come the extremists. But like, the B team of the extremists. So this one opens up and Batman is basically telling Red Hood and Damian like, hey, we're not going to fight, not because Telos says so, like, screw that. And Red Hood's like, do we really have any other choice? And we see they're getting swarmed by a bunch of dolls that are attacking them because one of the extremists is named Carney, and he is just like a toy master sort of thing, I guess. He just makes toys and he like licks a lollipop and he's wearing like a crown. It's a whole thing. And the extremists are like, this is dumb. Why are we attacking Batman with dolls? And he's just like, look, if it doesn't work out, then we attack them afterwards, but just let me have my fun. So we see that they are making short work of the dolls, getting through them like with no problem. And then Batman is attacked by the big stony guy named Brute. And then the rest of the extremists all jump into the fray and start attacking as well. I can't even begin to... One is named Death Angel, one is Carney, one is Brute. I think the last one gets a name later on, but I couldn't tell you. So they all start going one-on-one, attacking each other. Carney's going against Damian, Red Hood's going against Death Angel, Batman is Brute, and Scarlet goes up against Random Lady with a flaming sword. So... nothing happens. I really cannot say it any better than that. The fight continues on. Every once in a while, people look over at the other people fighting and recognize that they're in a bit of a jam, but they don't do anything immediately. So they all are just continuing their fights. And then eventually we see Robin gets tied up by Carney, and while he's distracted, he's picked up by Brute, and who's about to do like a Bane backbreaker. And when Damian and Jason both see that, they say, all right, we got to go help him. They escape their own villain fights and go over and deliver simultaneous punches at Brute's face, which causes Batman to be dropped. And they're like, hey, Batman, you cool? And he's like, yeah, I'm fine. Let's work together this time. So they say that, and then Batman goes up against Carney, and Robin and Red Hood go up against Death Angel. So they still split up. Like, it's not like they're even doing anything. We see that Carney just, like, does something with a yo-yo, and Batman just yanks the yo-yo. That's literally all it is. Then he goes over, Red Hood and Damian take out Death Angel and then go over to the Flaming Sword Lady and take care of her. What happened to Scarlet, the last girl? She's not doing anything. However, turns out they didn't actually knock out Brute, so Brute gets back up, picks up Damian and Jason. He's standing near the edge of a roof, and all of a sudden the roof starts to crumble, so he starts falling off because of an earthquake. Damian manages to get free, Jason starts being brought down, and we see as he punches Brute in the face, Brute falls down to his death. Jason's about to fall as well, but then Damian grabs hold. But then Damian loses his grip on the building, so then Batman has to grab him, and he says, hey, no one's winding up dead in that alley. So he pulls both of them up, and he's like, is everyone all right? And Jason's like, I've had worse, obviously. So Jason and Damian shake hands, and they say, hey, thanks for the look out there. You did great, all that. They point out that the earthquake is not natural causes, but like, they have nothing else to go off of, so they just ignore it. And they say like, oh yeah, we won for whatever that's worth. For right now, Gotham is safe, but there's no way of telling what Telos is going to do next. And he turns to Jason and is just like, we're going to need you around, both of you. Because I guess Scarlet is actually still here. Whatever. And he's just like, yeah, I'm looking to move into the future. We can put the past behind us. And Red Hood's just like, I can if you can. And he turns down to Damien, just being like, hey, Damien, look, we're technically in this weird period where, like, I came back from the dead and I've barely been a father to you, but I love you and I want to continue to be a father to you. And he's like, I love you too, Dad. So we see them looking out over the skyline saying like, oh, this is what we've always done. We protect what's precious to us. And we cut very briefly ahead, it seems like, where Superman is talking to Batman. And he's like, oh, you know, despite the circumstances, it seems like it's going okay. And Batman's just like, yeah, this seems like a time for fathers, Clark. And it's not immediately clear whether or not this is, I mean, it is definitely the same Superman that just gave birth to a son, but it's not clear whether or not he's given birth to the son yet, like whether or not John is there. So he basically says like, oh yeah, do you think we would be here if either of us had our fathers? And Superman's like, I did have my father. I had Pa Kent. Like, what are you talking about? I'm sorry for your situation, but like I was not in that same boat. And he's like, yeah, no, fair enough. Anyway, take care of yourself, Clark. And then he just like swings away. And Clark's just like, yeah, you too, Bruce. And we see him swinging along with his 2 adopted sons. The end. Whatever. Like, I get the point we were going for. I get the idea of like the Bat family and settling in on this thing where Bruce is like, hey, you know, I'm accepting of all of you. This isn't something where we need to have these like fights or whatever. But it was weak. The villains they were going up against were weak. The resolution to it was weak. It more so just felt like the most basic, like, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. It didn't feel like it was saying anything, doing anything. It just felt like the most basic storytelling device I could possibly imagine for a Bat family book. So I can't really give this one very high. Art-wise, it's fine. What happened to Scarlet? Has just disappeared halfway through the issue, and then we just see her tying up Death Angel. Like, okay, that was a character. I'm saying 5. I really didn't get anything out of this. It's a very fast read, I'll give it that, but like, it just was not a fun read. There was nothing about this that I thought, if this was $3.99, I would feel gypped if I got this for like $1.50. You know, it's just way too much for what it's asking for. Convergence Harley Quinn #2, written by Steve Pugh, art by Phil Winslade. So last issue, we got the whole breakdown of Harley is in a much better mental space now. She's dating an ex-cop. Like, ever since the dome went up, she's actually managed to turn around a lot. But then she was summoned as a champion to fight against Captain Carrot of the Zoo Crew. And they said, well, the only way that's going to work is if she's crazy again. So Catwoman and Poison Ivy gave her own pills, and we ended it with her being totally insane. This issue picks up in the middle of the issue after some stuff happened. We see that one of the Zoo Crew named Pig Iron is teleported into the arena, which is a carnival. And just like, hey, you need to warn Captain Carrot of the absolute monster that he's facing down right now. So Pig Iron looks around and he's like whispering, saying like, where are you, Captain Carrot? I gotta warn you. And then he sees hanging upside down from inside the rafters of a roller coaster what he thinks is Captain Carrot. It says like, oh, that lady you're facing against is crazy. She ain't one of the heroes. She's crazy. So as he approaches, turns out it's actually Harley, who's wearing her old suit, so it looks like the 2, I don't know what you call them, dangly bits are rabbit ears. And she's like, haha, hey pig, no squealers. And we see a big explosion where it seems like Pig Iron, who may be a robot, was like broken up into a whole bunch of pieces. Captain Carrot hears him yell out and just like, Pig Iron, how have you been here? Well, I'm coming, buddy. And we see Harley takes a puddle of oil and writes a message on fence, and as Captain Carrot arrives, it says rabbit season. And he's like, no, Pig Iron, I will avenge you. Cut back 1 hour earlier. Captain Carrot arrives at the carnival and just says like, hello, is anyone here? My name is Captain Carrot. I ate some vegetables that were irradiated by an alien meteorite, and now I have powers, and I'm ready to fight for my city. And he's basically saying like, hey, whatever champion they send against me, I know I won't face this alone, because I've got the Zoo Crew back at home, and my friends stand with me. And we see there's alley cat who has powers. Its name is Alley Catabra. And he's like reaching out with her powers to try to sense like Captain Carrot. And she's like, oh, I hear him, but it's very faint. So Captain Carrot comes across Harley. And she's holding a goldfish, just saying like, hey, isn't this place great? I won a goldfish already. And he's like, look, I'm not here to hurt you. And she's like, oh, that's fantastic, because that's exactly why I'm here. And she says, look, I've got all the basic superpowers. Ultra Fists, Scorch Vision, Canary Scream, Awesome Portation, which is apparently teleportation with awesomeness added, and a magic hammer stolen from Viking gods. And Captain Carrot's like, magic hammer? And so she slams it down. He freaks out. And the zoo crew's like, I've lost him. He's already lost. So Captain Carrot, when he's pulling himself back out, he looks around. Harley's nowhere to be seen. And he's like, that must be the awesome portation. But we see that she's actually just jumping onto a nearby roller coaster and taking it to duck out whenever he's not paying attention. So we cut back over to the zoo crew and they're like, hey, we have to find a way to help Captain Carrot. Like, somebody think of something. Well, we got to do some way to figure out this threat that he faces. So we see Captain Carrot is using his super hop to chase after Harley, and she's like, ho ho, well, I got something for you over here. And she turns around and casts Fireball. Nothing happens, but then all of a sudden the Ferris wheel blows up behind her, and she's like, oh, that was a trick shot. And then as Captain Carrot's in awe, she just somersaults out of the scene. We then see back in Gotham where, I forget what the guy's name is, Louis, that's it, the ex-cop boyfriend. He's sitting, he's looking all sad, and Poison Ivy and Catwoman are just like, hey, what is it? You're afraid. What are you so afraid of? And she's like, I have forgotten what Harley was like when she was like that. Like, that was the same way I felt when I saw her at the art gallery. Meanwhile, the zoo crew is like, I've got it. I've got a lock on her friends. I'm going to probe their memories, their thoughts and feelings about this creature that Captain Carrot's facing. And as Louis recounts his feelings of what he felt like when Harley was going to kill him at the art gallery robbery when the first issue happened, that's when the alley cat locks on, and she sees this fiery demon-looking Harley about to crush this guy's head in with a mallet. And immediately she's just like, she's a monster! We have to warn Captain Carrot! We gotta do everything we can! So back over with Louis, and then Catwoman's like, if you are so afraid of her, what were you doing living with her? And he's like, she wasn't like that. Like, she visited me in the hospital, and I saw she was just, a little bit kooky, but she was a normal person. She was real without the costume and all that on. And all of a sudden, I wasn't afraid of her. I was afraid for her. So he points out, like, he got his hand surgery and all that, and he's just like, yeah, you really think he can win this fight? So we then see Harley still chasing around Captain Carrot, manages to get the drop on him, and then drops him into a funhouse like side thing. And that's the moment where Pig Iron comes in, and Harley's like, hey, wait a minute, that's cheating. They can't teleport in extra help. So that's where we get the whole intro before. But what we didn't see was that as Harley is about to go attack Pig Iron, the Telos drones come in, and they're like, you are not allowed to be here. This is part of the arena. You're messing with the games. And he's just like, hey, who says I'm not a combatant? He starts trying to fight the drones, but they just end up teleporting him out. But they leave behind an oil puddle and his logo, specifically, that fell off earlier. So at that point, Captain Carrot's like, Pig Iron, I heard you. Where are you? And that's where Harley's like, hey, I got a great prank I'm going to play on that rabbit. And so she writes rabbit season on the thing and makes Captain Carrot think that his best friend is dead. So then Captain Carrot, in his grief, realizes that Harley's just been using the roller coaster to get around. She's like, oops, I've been caught. All right, yep. And she's readies her big-ass mallet, ready to attack. But then we see that an earthquake happens, knocks out the bottom of the roller coaster, and they're now about to tumble to their deaths. Captain Carrot punches the mallet and just straight up destroys it. And he's like, wait a minute, that wasn't a magic hammer. But then Harley's got a cut on her finger, and she just flicks it at Captain Carrot, and she's like, I got acid for blood. And he's like, wait a minute, no you don't. So as the roller coaster is reaching the hole in it, it starts tumbling off, and Captain Carrot's like, quick, use your awesome portation. She's like, I thought you could fly. And he's like, I thought you could do everything. So they tumble down to the ground, and they manage to survive. we just miss whatever happens next, but they're just sitting there talking to each other, eating some carrots that Harley had on like an ammo belt around her chest, and just like, oh yeah, you know, I'm sorry I pretended to murder your friend. I thought it was kind of funny at the time, but good thing these bombs that I had in the roller coaster didn't go off, huh? And they try to figure out why they were paired up together because they can't figure out like what's the attraction here, what's going on. So Captain Carrot's just nibbling on the carrots, and Harley's like, yeah, you know, I don't have that many powers. I do actually have a little bit of super strength. Oh, and also my friend is a gardener, and she gave me immunity to all poisons. And Captain Carrot just like looks down at the carrot that he's eating and starts spitting it out, and she's just like, oh yeah, you know, and maybe I'm the brains of this operation because I do have a doctorate. And Captain Carrot's just like looking at his body, just like, oh God, am I going to die? And she's like, hey, what's up? Why you look terrible? So we cut back over sometime later. Catwoman delivers a goldfish that Harley won at the carnival to Louis. And Louis' like, oh, how is she? And Catwoman's like, she's still a little bit psychotic. She'll start coming down eventually, though. But like, you know, we can't have her around people yet. And Louis' like, I'm not people. So Catwoman turns the corner. Harley's standing there just like, oh, did he read the note? Did you give it to him? And we see the note that Harley wrote, which just says, smell you later, along with like 50 X's to signify kisses. And Catwoman's like, I don't think he's ready for that yet, Harley. Let's get going. So they head out in a van outside the building that Poison Ivy's driving. We see another earthquake happens. Louis just looking sad at the goldfish. And as they drive off, Harley's just being extra annoying about backseat driving, and can we have the radio on? Can we stop for donuts? And they just tell her to shut up. And that's the issue. It's fun in a way. I don't know. Like, I was expecting more cartoonishness from Captain Carrot and more pathos from Harley Quinn, because we went through that entire first issue of like, oh, you know, she's normal now, and it's this thing where like she has a life and she kind of wants to keep it in a way. So having it then pivot over and she's just crazy and completely lost all, I see the appeal. It's fun for the scene that it's happening in, but to leave it with just saying like, oh, the Gotham City Sirens are still a thing, I don't know. I was kind of hoping for a little bit more. And then, like I said, Captain Carrot just kind of felt like not even a cartoon, you know? Like, he doesn't do a single cartoony thing. He's just may as well be Superman. I don't know. I was expecting or hoping, I guess, for a little bit more. I think overall this one's still, art-wise, it's very good. 6.5. It's probably just expectations on my part, but I was expecting this to be like essentially a, oh God, what's his first name? Giffen. I can't remember his first name offhand, but like he just gets wild and crazy with his stories. And I think that that's the sort of thing where that's what I'm looking for here. It just gets so off the wall crazy, but it ended up being pretty tame, all things considered. So yeah, it's a little disappointing, but 6.5 is where it's at. And that's it. That is all the comics that came out from DC Comics this March 6th, 2015. I had to think about that for a second there. I had nothing else to say. Like, as much as I would love to give in more to this end bit and say like, oh yeah, here's this crazy thing that's coming up. Like, no, DC has been very kind to me. They have made Convergence the most well thought out release schedule possibly in the entire time that I've been doing this show. 11 comics every week. Nothing at all surprising coming up. Like, cool, great. Please keep that up. I would appreciate that so much. You have no idea. But yeah, I guess I'll just tell you what's coming up next week. So next week we have the 0 hour timeline. So things that were in the timeline leading right up to 0 hour, but no further. And that is Catwoman, Green Arrow, Justice League International, Suicide Squad, Superboy, Aquaman, Batman Shadow of the Bat, Green Lantern Parallax, Supergirl Matrix, and Superman Man of Steel. And then additionally, of course, issue 6 of the main Convergence series. But beyond that, I really don't have anything else to say, so I'll just go through all the usual ending bits, and you can go ahead and decide where you want to stop listening. But I'll say something super cool at the end, so you definitely need to stay at least that far. So if you have any thoughts on any of the comics I've talked about this week, last week, any week at all, go ahead and add them into the comments down below if you're watching the video version. If you're listening to the audio version, guess what? We've got social media platforms. We've got a Discord. We've got a subreddit. We've got a Patreon. Just kind of stick to the Discord, though, because I do not have access to the back end of the Patreon, and I'm pretty sure the subreddit died forever ago. So there's that. Yeah, no, I mean, that's really all about it, I have to say. So thank you very much for watching, listening, however you consume this podcast. Be sure to tune in next week and interact with this one in a nice, positive, gentle way. I'm a very sensitive man, and I need to be told I'm doing things okay, especially because I am halfway through Convergence month, and I'm questioning a lot of my life choices. Where was I? Oh, yeah. Always try to remember, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.